Despite my efforts to be kind, it's disheartening that my sister-in-law spoke with an icy tone, seemingly pushing me away. She remained resolute about claiming my brother's estate and showed no willingness to compromise. I couldn't shake the growing anxiety that enveloped me, casting a shadow on my spirits. I'm Kathy Morgan, a 27-year-old doctor at a university hospital. My brother recently passed away, and today marks his funeral. I find myself at his house, surrounded by people who remember him. Amidst the crowd, Jocelyn, my brother's wife, approached me. "Ah, there you are, Kathy. I'm glad I found you. You've been working hard today. Could we talk over there for a bit?" Jocelyn asked, initiating a conversation. "Yes, Jocelyn." "Sure," I replied, following her. My brother and Jocelyn married 3 years ago and moved into the spacious house where we grew up. The house, meticulously built by our parents, boasted a large garden and other features. Despite our comfortable living arrangements, our family faced challenges. My mother battled a chronic illness, confining her to a hospital since my early childhood. My father's wealth allowed us a comfortable life, but he too succumbed to overwork and joined my mother in death. Left alone in the large house, my brother and I became each other's company. Though he continued living there and flourished in his medical career, I ventured into a life of my own after university. The days leading up to my brother's funeral passed in a blur. As we moved from crowded rooms to quieter hallways, Jocelyn approached me with a grave matter. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about, Kathy. It might seem too soon after the funeral, but it's about the inheritance. It's a very important matter. So, I believed it was necessary to have a discussion with you beforehand. However, I found myself bewildered and uneasy as Jocelyn suddenly broached the topic of inheritance. Are you talking about my brother's inheritance?" I asked, seeking clarification. "Yes, that's right. Since we don't have children, the inheritance would be between you and me. Legally, I would get 3/4 and you 1/4, so I would inherit $1 million, Jocelyn explained, her hand covering her mouth, a subtle smile forming. Her revelations didn't stop there. "Oh, and I'll be taking this house too. After all, it's the house where I lived with Henry, and it's filled with our memories as his wife. It's only natural that I inherit the house, right?" She continued. "What I wanted to confirm with you, Kathy, was this. You don't have any objections, do you?" Jocelyn spoke gently and calmly, but there was a lack of the expected sorrow over losing her husband. I had only met Jocelyn at my brother's wedding, making this our second encounter. The indescribable unease I felt during our first meeting returned as I observed her behavior. Back then, I only vaguely understood, but now, after losing my brother, she seemed to be revealing her true nature. Unable to contain my discomfort, I confronted Jocelyn. "Jocelyn, I think this is not the way such important matters should be discussed. Properly, on another day," I asserted. Upon my objection, Jocelyn suddenly turned distant. Her previously calm face tightened, and she looked at me with cold eyes. "Oh, is that so? I'm trying to be nice, and yet you don't understand. What a pity. Well, I have a reliable lawyer. I will make sure to get my share of the inheritance," she said, her tone condescending. "I married Henry because he came from a wealthy family. Why would I marry such a serious and boring man for any other reason? He was truly uninteresting, and I'm genuinely relieved that he's gone from this world." I couldn't believe what Jocelyn was saying. My bad premonition about my sister-in-law was proving true. Did my brother know this side of her? If he did, why did he choose to marry someone so unsuitable for him? Shocked and unable to say anything, I watched as Jocelyn walked away, having said what she wanted and seen my reaction. She probably felt there was no need to stay any longer. I stood there frozen, overwhelmed by complex emotions. Even after returning to my own home, I felt downcast and engulfed in gloom. I had a feeling that more unpleasant things might follow, leaving me restless as these thoughts weighed on me. I found myself reminiscing about the years spent with my brother, feeling as if my heart would burst. Realizing I was now alone, tears involuntarily traced my cheeks. Then, a precious promise I had made with my brother vividly came back to me, as if I were seeing it right in front of my eyes. Kathy, I decided when I grow up, I'll become a doctor. One bit enough to cure Mom's illness. If Big Brother is going to be a doctor, then I'll become one too. We'll study together and find a cure for Mom's illness, right? Let's work hard to become doctors together. Then Mom will surely get better. My brother had declared, his face beaming with happiness. That important promise echoed in my mind after our mother passed away. My brother reaffirmed his resolve to me, saying, Kathy, I've decided to pursue medicine. There are many people like Mom fighting against diseases. I want to continue researching until we find a treatment for her illness. I shared his sentiment, and together we seriously aimed to become doctors. But now, my brother is gone, and I felt the weight of working hard for both of us. 3 days later, a problem arose. I received a call on my cell phone from the hospital where my brother had worked. The caller, Robert, a subordinate of my brother, apologized for contacting me suddenly and expressed a need to discuss something regarding Henry's wife. Agreeing to meet at the hospital, I waited in the cafeteria for Robert. He soon appeared and got straight to the point after a brief greeting. He explained, Actually, yesterday, Jocelyn suddenly came to the ward. She brought some sweets, saying my husband received great care here. Then she asked who was the closest to her husband among his colleagues. Describing Henry as kind and dependable, Robert recounted their college days and work experiences. However, Jocelyn's line of questioning seemed to change, as if she was probing for something more. She then asked, Is there anything my husband was hiding from me? Instinctively feeling that getting further involved was dangerous, I answered, Not that I know of. Suddenly, Jocelyn raised her voice, demanding to see where her husband's belongings were. She insisted that she could check them right there, threatening consequences if anything hidden was found. Understanding that Jocelyn was searching for something related to the inheritance, Robert explained that he refused her request, citing the confidential and personal nature of the ward. However, she was later seen wandering around the hospital, probing other staff. I couldn't forgive Jocelyn for barging into my brother's workplace and troubling unrelated people. Deciding it was best to meet with her directly and settle things, I thanked Robert and was about to leave when Jocelyn appeared at the hospital entrance. It seemed like she was planning to probe around the hospital again today. Noticing me, Jocelyn approached and spoke. Oh, Kathy, what are you doing here? Were you thinking the same thing, perhaps? I found myself speechless, maintaining a silent demeanor as Jocelyn suddenly burst into laughter. You're searching too, aren't you? You don't have to hide it. Searching for what? Pretending you don't know Henry's will. He must have thought that if I got it, nothing good would happen. He would have written a will to prevent me from getting the inheritance. If he did write one, he must have given it to someone without hiding it, so I probed you. But it seemed you didn't know, Jocelyn remarked, continuing her tirade despite my silence. But really, Henry's sister, not knowing anything, he must not have trusted you. You didn't hear anything even when Henry was suffering, did you? Henry didn't rely on you, it seems, she continued, her words hitting me like a barrage. My head spun, and I gradually lost track of what my sister-in-law was saying. Given your reaction, you really didn't know. About a year ago, I noticed Henry's demeanor was different, so I asked him if something was wrong. Then he said he might be ill with the same disease as your mother. He looked very troubled. His complexion was poor too. Henry was often busy and away, and I was out too, so we didn't see each other much at home. But I noticed something was wrong with him. He must have been suffering mentally. As for me, I married him thinking I never have to worry about money. To be burdened with caring for a chronically ill husband was the last thing I wanted, Jocelyn confidently explained, seemingly unaware of the impact her words had on me. In shock, particularly about Henry suffering from an illness, I stood there stunned. Henry sounded normal during the occasional phone calls. He must have hidden it, not wanting to worry me. But I should have noticed something was wrong. We were the only siblings, and I didn't even know that he was suffering from the same illness as our mother. It was terrifying, especially since I had witnessed our mother suffer from it. While I was lost for words in shock, Jocelyn pressed on. Are you blaming yourself, Kathy? Honestly, you and your brother are too serious and gloomy. It's sickening. I can't wait to get the inheritance and say goodbye to such dreary people. After her cutting remark, Jocelyn was about to leave when Robert's voice came from behind me. Excuse me, is this really a conversation to have in the middle of the hospital? Frankly, it's a disturbance. There are other patients here. If you're done, please leave. Robert, is that you? Were you eavesdropping just now? That's very polite of you. Even if Jocelyn raises her voice, if it's a conversation I don't want to hear, I can't help but overhear it. Jocelyn retorted, turning around with a surprised expression. Ah, Dr. Hansen, weren't you abroad? When did you return? Ah, yes, that's right. I departed from there the day before yesterday and just returned. I was supposed to come back sooner, but my flight was delayed. You're Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister, right? I was just about to go see you. This is perfect timing. Yes, I am Henry's sister. I awkwardly responded to the sudden conversation. Scott, seemingly searching for something, began rummaging through his bag. Where is it? Ah, here it is. Here you go. This is Henry's will. He asked me to give it to you if he died. Sorry, it's late. I'm glad I could finally deliver it, Scott explained, handing me Henry's will enclosed in a brown envelope. I couldn't help but wonder why my brother gave the will to Scott. Why did my brother give this to you, Scott? I know, right? I've been friends with Henry for a long time. You might not remember me, Kathy. Do you recognize this? Scott showed me 3 moles on the back of his right hand. As a child, I saw those moles and said they looked like the Big Dipper. Ah, those moles. Could it be Scotty? Scott used to live nearby and was my brother's best friend. I affectionately called him Scotty, and we often played together. He moved away in high school, and I had completely forgotten about him. Kathy, you remembered. That's great. I reconnected with Henry when I became a doctor. I'd always felt we were similar, but I never imagined we'd end up in the same profession. Henry talked about surprising you with our reunion, but then you found out about his illness. That's when he came to me with a request. He knew I also had a law degree, so I guess that's why he trusted me with his will, Scott explained. Finishing his explanation, Scott turned toward Jocelyn, addressing her with a cold tone. Ah, about the inheritance, you might want to give up. Deceiving a kind-hearted person like Henry might work, but not with me. Unfortunately for you, Henry was aware of your cunning nature. He asked me to watch over his wife, in case something happened to him. I've been getting reports from his subordinates about your abnormal behavior, Jocelyn. You were planning to find the will, forge it, and claim the inheritance, weren't you? But if it's too late now, it's in your best interest to back off quietly. Besides, Henry said the right use of the inheritance is something only my sister Kathy would understand. I see, so that's how it is. But to trust a sister who didn't even know about her brother's illness to leave a large sum of money to such a young girl, really, what was he thinking? Who knows what she'll use it for? Jocelyn maintained a defiant attitude, but her face had paled slightly. Looking around, I noticed a crowd had gathered due to the commotion. Among them were young doctors talking to each other. Hey, isn't that the person who wrote that paper and made headlines recently, right? I was thinking the same. That's Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister. I read her paper on rare disease research, and it was truly impressive. I heard she's going to do research abroad soon. The conversation among the young doctors caught the attention of other medical personnel, causing a buzz in the area. More discussions were overheard. Isn't that Henry Morgan's wife causing a scene? She's famous for being seen around Fifth Avenue. Oh, well, that's true. Shopping for luxury brands, going on trips, living a flashy life. I heard she's been supporting a gigolo. Maybe she's after the inheritance. That's possible. I mean, she's been wandering around the hospital, asking questions. It's creepy. Amidst various conversations, I realized I hadn't yet checked the will from my brother. I peered into the brown envelope in my hands. Inside, there was a piece of stationery and a white envelope marked Will. Upon opening it, I saw it began with "To Kathy" in my brother's handwriting. As I read through it, I was so shocked by the contents that I instinctively handed the will to Scotty. "Scotty, this is..." After reading the will, Scotty smiled quietly and addressed Jocelyn. "Jocelyn, it seems you've lost. Henry was planning to end his marriage with you. The letter says so. About the marriage certificate you forced him to write, it seems Henry never submitted it, so he wanted to assure his sister that she could rest easy. You and Henry were effectively in a common law marriage. You never had any right to the inheritance in the first place. That's a lie. There's no way he would do such a thing." Jocelyn's momentum faded, and she began muttering quietly to herself. "Kath, can I see that envelope too? May I?" "Oh, sure." Scotty peered inside the brown envelope and confirmed its contents, then added another blow. "Here's the official will as well, Jocelyn. If you want to see for yourself, I won't stop you. Feel free." Jocelyn's face turned ashen, and she looked visibly upset. She seemed at a loss for words, her lips trembling. Continuous criticism of Jocelyn rose from the onlookers. Jocelyn, now without an escape, was frozen in place. Soon, the hospital's administration, alerted by the commotion, had the crowd dispersed to their respective duties. When I looked up again, Jocelyn was gone. After that day, she disappeared from our family home and never reappeared before me. Following my brother's will, I inherited the estate. My research paper on the rare disease that affected my mother and brother received high acclaim, leading me to relocate overseas to continue my research. Part of the inheritance was used as a donation to help those suffering from the rare disease, and the rest was allocated for research funding. Scotty, my brother's best friend, and now more than that, became my life partner. We, as medical colleagues working abroad, are planning to register after our marriage this June. Our hope to free more people from the grip of the disease that afflicted my mother and brother remains unchanged. Together as husband and wife, we aim to continue our research, supporting each other along the way.